$300 million worth of investment is coming to steel tube making operations in Sault Ste. Marie. As CTV's Courtney Nordstrom explains, Tariff will be set up for new work and new jobs over the next 2.5 years.
Both the federal and provincial governments will be providing over $70 million for upgrades at the Sault Ste. steel plant. With investment from the company itself, a total of $306 million will transform the facility over the next 30 months.
This investment will expand production, extend the range of made in Canada products, and maximize productivity through the installation of new, state-of-the-art equipment. When this project is complete, we will have enhanced our production capacity significantly.
Tariff is the only manufacturer in the country capable of producing the steel pipes needed for Canada's oil and gas industry. And this kind of Ontario-made manufacturing is more important than ever before.
Washington thought tariffs would break Canadian steel. It didn't work out that way. In May 2026, one of the world's largest steel pipe manufacturers stood alongside Canadian federal and provincial officials in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, and announced the single largest capital commitment it has ever made to its Canadian operations. Not a study, not a framework, a funded, construction-ready, $306 million expansion of a Canadian steel facility in the middle of the most aggressive American tariff regime in the modern history of the bilateral relationship. The company is Tariff, and what they just did in Northern Ontario changes the story Washington has been trying to tell about Canadian steel. Tariff is not a regional manufacturer making a defensive bet in a difficult market. It is one of the world's largest producers of steel pipes for the energy industry, a global company operating across 5 continents, supplying precision-engineered tubular products to oil wells and pipelines in dozens of countries. When a company of that scale commits $36 million of its own capital to a single facility, on top of more than $350 million it has already invested in that same facility since 2020, is not reacting to a news cycle. It is making a long-term commercial judgment about where demand is going. Tariff's total Canadian manufacturing investment since 2020 now exceeds $650 million. A company does not deploy $650 million in a market it believes is contracting. It deploys $650 million in a market it believes is about to grow substantially and for a long time. Martin Castro, president of Tariff Canada, was direct about the reasoning. In Canada, we know energy connects us. Tariff steel pipes manufactured in Ontario and delivered through our Rig Direct service network to oil and gas operators across the country enable Canadian energy sovereignty. With this investment, we illustrate Tariff's steadfast commitment to Canadian manufacturing. The demand signal Castro is pointing to is one every analyst tracking Canada's energy sector has been watching build for 2 years. The pipeline construction demand that the Carney government's West Coast Pipeline Implementation Agreement is designed to generate. A 1 million barrel per day export corridor running from Alberta to British Columbia's northern coast. If constructed, it will require steel pipe at a volume no single Canadian facility can supply from existing capacity. That is the market Tariff is positioning to serve. And the Sault Ste. Marie facility is the only place in Canada capable of manufacturing the steel pipe required to serve it. The $306 million investment, $36 million from Tariff, over $70 million from federal and provincial governments, with the remainder from additional company capital, will transform the Sault Ste. Marie Industrial Center over the next 30 months. The expansion targets 2 critical product lines. The first is oil country tubular goods, OCTG, the steel casings and tubing that go into every oil and gas well drilled in Canada. When a drill bit enters the ground in Alberta's oil sands, the borehole it creates needs to be stabilized, sealed, and connected to surface equipment. OCTG does that work. Without it, there are no wells. Without wells, there is no production. Without production, there is no pipeline. The second is line pipe, the steel that carries oil, gas, and refined products from wellheads through gathering systems, trunk lines, and the export corridors that connect Canadian production to global markets. New equipment will modernize every stage of manufacturing: hot rolling, heat treatment, testing, and finishing. An additional threading line will expand capacity for the precision connections that link individual pipe joints into the continuous strings running thousands of meters underground. Critically, Tariff is not expanding generic commodity capacity. The new product grades cover shale drilling applications, thermal SAGD operations that dominate Alberta's oil sands, and offshore applications for Canada's East Coast and future Arctic development. Specialized high-specification grades, exactly what Canada's energy mix actually requires. Here is where the story gets strategically significant. The same Section 232 tariff, 50% on Canadian steel exports to the United States, that Washington designed to pressure Canadian steel producers into retreat, is simultaneously creating the conditions that made this investment inevitable. The West Coast Pipeline, if constructed, is a Canadian domestic infrastructure project. The steel it requires is not subject to American export tariffs in either direction. Steel manufactured in Sault Ste. Marie, installed in a Canadian pipeline, shipping oil to Asian markets at international prices. That revenue stream bypasses the American market entirely. The tariff designed to shrink Canadian steel is accelerating the domestic Canadian infrastructure investment that reduces Canada's dependence on American market access. Washington spent 18 months betting that pressure on Canadian steel would force producers to pull back. Instead, one of the world's largest steel pipe manufacturers chose to go bigger, in Canada for Canada. Not every steel producer in Sault Ste. Marie is in the same position. Algoma Steel, also headquartered in Northern Ontario, reported a $159.4 million net loss in the first quarter of 2026. It absorbed $27.4 million in direct tariff costs in a single quarter and has been restructuring its commercial operations away from U.S. exposed markets toward Canadian plate steel and defense applications.